Hey everybody, some gadget guy here with another gadget versus gadget showdown fight for blood. And today I'm sort of cheating on the whole phablet versus phablet comparisons in comparing the LG G3 with the iPhone 6 Plus. According to LG, this should be a premier flagship phone, but not a phablet. I still say that once you start crossing into that 5.5-inch screen territory, the ergonomic issues that arrive courtesy of that larger screen size start making this more of a mini tablet experience rather than just a regular phone experience. But because both of these phones clock in at 5.5-inch screens, I actually do feel it's more appropriate to compare these two devices together than, say, the G3 and the regular iPhone 6. It is absolutely shocking how good a job LG has done at cramming 5.5 diagonal inches of screen into a form factor which is more manageable to use. Start getting into Galaxy Notes, the LG G Flex, the Optimus G Pro, the Lumia 1520, and I just find them to be a bit too unwieldy to use as I'm running around and trying to use these things one-handed. The G3 is a much more manageable experience in how it fits and feels in the palm of my hand, versus the iPhone 6 Plus, which looks and feels noticeably larger than the G3. And in this size disparity between these two phones, I really do think we see the uncompromising ethic, the uncompromising design from Apple working as a negative. So to make this phone so impossibly thin, this is a sexy thin device, you had to squish stuff out further out to the edges of the phone and the screen. And you still need to make room for all of the tech that goes into the home button and Touch ID. And they had to build in the radios like NFC into the upper top edge of this phone. And those became the compromises and trade-offs to achieve squishing the phone as flat as it is. At its thickest, the LG certainly is thicker than the iPhone 6 Plus. This is 7.1 millimeters thick, whereas the G3 is 8.9 millimeters thick at its thickest. But the LG has this nice trick of tapering to the corners of the phone, which actually makes it feel a lot skinnier in the hand than its 8.9 millimeters of girth would lead you to believe. And when we start dealing with really large phones, I like the ergonomic touches employed to make them easier to use. Apple moving the power button to the side makes the iPhone easier to turn on and off without dancing the phone around in your hands to try and reach a top-mounted power button. Though it does make the phone a little bit more difficult to turn on via the home button. You kind of have to dance your phone down to the bottom. You have to kind of fingertip float it. So LG's given us these back buttons. I don't really think they're better or worse than the side-mounted controls found on other devices. But LG has one of the best implementations of tap to wake that I've ever used. So as I'm holding a phone, it's just a quick little double tap there to turn the screen on and a quick little double tap to turn the screen back off. Oh wait, was I actually in the phone and operating the home screens? Well, as long as I leave some empty space on a home screen, I can just tap it to turn the screen back off again. It's so easy. I really wish Apple had ripped that off. I don't want to get too bogged down in a debate between Android and iOS. Plenty of other outlets have beaten that horse to death, but I really do like the various capabilities that get employed with Android. So for example, now most flagship Androids have some kind of IR blaster built into them so that you can use your phone as a universal remote. I mean, that's just so handy. I actually now control my TV and cable box and stereo mostly from my phone. And the addition of a Chromecast means that I'm switching back and forth between cable TV and then web streaming content and never having to switch handheld devices to control all that. Now, of course, you do have a great Apple ecosystem with Apple TV, but it doesn't have an IR blaster to just have the hardware backup to make sure that you can always communicate with something like a television. And Apple is a very conservative hardware company. They don't push the boundaries on that type of tech experimentation. And another area where these two phones are very closely matched is their camera. Both of these are 1/3 inch sensors with optical image stabilization built in, and they both are employing very similar LED flashes with whiter and yellower bulbs to control for white balance and exposure. Of course, we have a higher resolution sensor on the G3, which provides us better zoom in HD video, and then also provides us the capability to shoot 4K video. And hardware stabilized 4K video off of the G3 looks great for this sensor size. Both of these phones run into that same issue I have where larger image sensors provide a more pleasant background blur to your photos and videos, a shallower depth of field, but they match up rather well against each other. And these two phones, in my opinion, represent the peak, the absolute pinnacle of what we can achieve with a 1/3 inch sensor. And I don't think either of these companies have anywhere to go in improving the photography and video experience on their devices until they step up to larger sensors. And while I've got these phones flipped over, I do want to talk about how these devices will wear and age. This matte soft finish on the iPhone, the fact that it's a new metallic alloy, I hope will handle scratches and abrasions better than what LG has done with the G3. My G3 has been dropped exactly once from waist height onto asphalt. It was a terrifying slow motion experience, watching this beautiful slab of device tumble towards the ground faster than I could reach down to pick it out of the air. That one drop has resulted in scuffs and scrapes and scratches all along because it actually landed back cover and then bounced and then skidded on its front face. So I've got scrapes and scratches all over the back. There's a little nick in my laser focus. Thankfully, the camera sensor remained scratch-free. I've got scratches all along this border here along the screen, and it did actually slightly crack the very top of my screen right there. There's a little crack in the front face glass. Thankfully, the rest of the screen remained scratch-free. I think this tiny little edge was just enough to protect the phone from getting overly messed up. But it was disappointing. I mean, my phone aged 6 months in one drop. I don't know for certain because I refuse to do drop tests on review units. I'm not into gadget destruction porn. But I'm hoping that as this thing starts to wear out a little, as it starts to get a bit more worn, that the alloy that they're using here is going to hide those scrapes and scratches and abrasions, those things that happen while we're living, while we're using, these are mission critical communications devices. We have to have them with us all the time, which means they have to handle some abuse. I do hope that Apple's implementation of a metal shell will wear nicer over time. What we can also nerd battle about between these two 5.5-inch displays is the resolution. This is a 2K screen, 2560 by 1440 versus the iPhone's 1080p screen. Now, I want to give Apple kudos to finally landing a standard resolution HD display as opposed to some weird, funky Retina non-standard resolution thing. But of course, we're now seeing Android devices which are playing with a higher resolution, HD Plus, and the 6 Plus is going to face some amazing competition from the Galaxy Note 4 when it drops, and it will also have a 2560 by 1440 display. So I'm gonna piss off some people with this, but at 5.5 inches, I still feel that the way we mostly use our phones, this screen resolution doesn't provide as substantial a benefit as when we made the move from WVGA to 720p. It's kind of like when we went from VHS to DVD. That was a humongous jump. When we went from DVD to Blu-ray, it was a more modest jump or improvement in screen resolution. I kind of feel that way about 1080p to HD+. I mean, really looking at the fine pixel level detail, you have to zoom way in on a high resolution photo and then move your face fairly close to both of these screens before I can start to detect a difference in clarity, sharpness, and detail. As we often use our phones at sort of arm's length, I don't know that the higher resolution displays really provide as much benefit to the overall user experience when we're navigating our phones for the basics, like checking our email, jumping on Facebook. It certainly doesn't really help much for photos on Instagram because those are compressed to hell. And it's also terrifically difficult to find native resolution content for 2560 by 1440. You either have HD content or you jump up to 4K content. There wasn't really much produced for capital Q HD. And while Apple might lose the resolution war between these two devices, they do have the brighter screen. So to match, I'm down to like 80% of the max screen brightness to match the output of the G3. And you can crank it up a little bit brighter and you can see, it might not be as readily apparent on video, but especially when you take these two outside, I have an easier time seeing the iPhone display than I do the G3 display. And the iPhone actually matches some of my favorite super bright screens like those found on Nokia devices and the Galaxy S5 for output outdoors. Battery life has kind of been a wash between these two. This is a 2900 milliamp hour battery. This is a 3000 milliamp hour battery. Android has a lot more stuff going on in the background. The G3 takes a hit because of this super high resolution display. I actually feel that the battery life is a little bit better on the iPhone 6 Plus, though that is mostly anecdotal. I do not have scientific measures to give you to demonstrate that the iPhone definitively has better battery life than the G3. But in my usage, shooting a ton of video, using them outdoors where you want the screen cranked up to max max brightness. I got home with more battery life on the 6 Plus than I did on the G3. And overall, while I might upset some LG fans, I do feel that the iPhone is just a more attractive device. I do think it's designed with a little bit more style, and it's got a bit more of a premium baked into the construction of the phone, whereas I've been a little disappointed with the G3's overall fit, finish, and feel. For better technological guts, they walked away from some of the things I really liked about the G2. The scratchy plastic around the sides, the unfinished feeling USB port. It doesn't quite feel as luxurious a device. You know, this feels like a luxury car. This feels like a high-end mid-range car. But that tech advantage will be substantial for a number of you guys out there who like to watch videos like this. I mean, not the least of which is just base model storage. 16 gigabytes on a premier flagship phone these days is too lean. I love that the mid-range iPhone is 64 now, but that really means that the base model should have been 32. And the LG comes with 32 gigabytes of storage and the ability to pop in memory cards. I've got 32 built into the phone and a 32 gig card in there. And that only cost me an additional $20 to double my storage on top of the base model LG G3. While I've been shooting this video, my social media feeds have been blowing up about Bendghazi or Bendgate with the iPhone, that this super sleek metal build can be bent. Now, I'm not gonna do a torture test. I'm not gonna sit here and crush this phone for you. I actually am not a fan of gadget destruction porn, especially when we know that there might be some kind of structural issue with the iPhone there. I can happily say that in the months that I've been using the G3, it has accidentally ended up in a back pocket that I've sat down on. And this plastic casing seems to have held up just fine. I also wear now sort of not skinny pants, but you know, I'm wearing some Levi's 501s and keeping the G3 in my front pocket. I haven't had any issues with the device warping or bending. I think it really does speak to the nature of having something this thin made out of metal. Metal's a pretty malleable material. And while I do enjoy taking shots at Apple as a company, I mean, they're so pompous, I think they kind of draw that lightning rod. I'm absolutely feeling for the Apple fans out there who might be considering picking up an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus. It's things like doubt that really put a hamper on our buying and owning of gadgets. Throws a little bucket of cold water on some of our fun. And in durability between these two devices, that might be the showdown. I really do think the build quality on the iPhone 6 Plus is going to be a little bit better for things like drops and scratches and bumps and bruises. But the frame on the G3 seems to be more resistant to bending when you do things like putting it in a pocket. For the sake of Apple fans out there, I really do hope that this issue of bent iPhones isn't as systemic as the internet echo chamber might be making it out to be. Having spent some time with the iPhone 6 Plus, I think this is a terrific update for the iOS ecosystem, finally giving iPhone users some choice. But I'm gonna fall back to the same generic talking point that I've had in a number of other videos and discussions on all of these devices, is that if you're a fan of one ecosystem over the other, one piece of hardware, one phone, or one set of features will not be enough to sway you to make an ecosystem change. We get really invested in the apps and services that we use. We get comfortable with the features of the operating systems that we happen to enjoy. But I absolutely want to hear from you folks out there. Which one of these phones are you most interested in trying out, or you're most looking forward to picking up? If you're shopping a new smartphone, if you're looking at a phablet or a premier flagship phone, which one really has your eye? I want to hear from you folks. Definitely drop me some comments down below, and especially as we start creeping up into these larger screen sizes, because I am not the biggest fan of phablets. So I really want to hear from you guys. What attracts you to the larger screened experiences that we're starting to get from Apple and that we've had from Windows phones and Androids for a couple years now? So please drop me those comments. I want to get into those conversations. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching my videos, sharing my videos, subscribing to my channel, dropping me those amazing comments down below my videos. I love the conversations that we get into. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.